In the last lesson, we set up our user interface and it's looking great. Just one small problem. It doesn't do anything, so let's fix that. We need to write some code that detects when the user interacts with the UI and then decides what to do with that input. And that, in a nutshell, is all apps really are if you think about it. A bunch of UI elements like buttons, text fields, images that a user interacts with, and then code that executes based on predefined responses to the user inputs. So before we start just writing code, let's think about the desired behavior of our app. This is the first step in writing code. No programmer just sits down and from their fingertips flow perfect bug-free code, okay? So we have our UI. We have a button, a label, and the background color. What do we want it to do? When we push the button, we want to change the text of our label and the background color. So you might say that we need to control the view with our code. And look, we have a file called viewController just for that purpose. So go ahead and click on your viewcontroller.swift file. And in this file is where we write the code that controls the view based on user input. Okay, enough theory, let's make some stuff happen. For our viewController to make changes to the view, it needs to know what is in the view and it needs to know when something has happened. The way the viewController knows what is in the view is by making a connection called an IB outlet, an interface builder outlet, and we do that like this. With our viewcontroller.swift file open, hold Option, and then click on the main.storyboard file. This opens the storyboard in what is called the assistant editor, okay? So now we can see both files side by side. So let's make that connection. Our viewController file needs to know what is in our viewController view over here. And so we have a label here. And if you're having trouble clicking on the label instead of the button, you can go ahead and just kind of drag that button down a little bit more, and then you can click on both of those a little bit easier. All right, so we are going to create an IB outlet, a connection to our viewController. And the way to do that, there's a few ways of doing it, but I think the simplest way to get going is to do what is often referred to as a control drag, okay? So you hold down Control, click on the element that you want to make a connection, and then start to drag, all the while holding Control. And you'll see this line come out, and what you can do is then come over here to our viewController file, and then here, inside of these curly braces, so under class, you can come over here and you'll see it says there insert outlet or outlet collection, okay? So release, and then you'll see this modal window pop up. And we have a few things here. We're not gonna go over too much, but we want it to be of type outlet connection. And then we're going to give it a name, okay? And we're gonna call this light switch label, okay? Now notice the way I wrote this, with the first letter being lowercase, with subsequent words capitalized and no spaces. This is called camel case and is the prevailing style in Swift. So now our viewController file knows about this light switch label and will be able to change and modify its properties. But now it needs to know when the user has interacted. It needs to know when this button has been pushed, okay? And we don't actually need this method right here for now. This will be important later on, but we don't need it, so I'm just going to delete it. This view did load. And let's create what's called an IB action, okay? So here we have an IB outlet, and we're gonna create an IB action. And the way to do that is, similarly, we're gonna hold Control and drag over here. And we're going to change the connection type to action. And we're gonna give this a name. I'm gonna say light switch button clicked. And I'm gonna say connect. And there we have it. I'm gonna go ahead and close our assistant editor by clicking on this little X up here. And now, whenever the user clicks on that button, whatever code we write here will be executed. So let's write a little code to test this out. Remember how in the interface builder, we could make changes to our UI elements by setting attributes in the attributes inspector. So for instance, with the UI label, we could change things like the text color and the text itself. And we have access to all those same attributes right here in our code, like this. Okay, so let's change the text of light switch label. Okay, so we reference it, we say light switch label, and you'll see it autocomplete right here with the type, which is UI label, and the IB outlet name. So it's light switch label. And then to change the text, we access that attribute using what is called dot notation. So we say light switch label dot, and then you'll see here a whole bunch of properties and methods that are part of a UI label. And we want the text, okay? And it says here, the current text that is displayed by the label. So we can access that attribute and then set a new value using the equal sign. So we're gonna say light switch label.text is equal to, and then we can just put something new in. I'm gonna say cattywampus. There we go. And then we can change other properties like the color. So let's say light switch label.text color is equal to, I'm gonna say UI color dot, and let's go red, okay? So don't worry too much about this syntax right here, the UI color.red. We'll discuss that more later on. Just know that this is going to be changing the text color to a red color. So let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to run it. I'm going to do Command R, our keyboard shortcut to run it. And if we click on our button here, hey, there we go. So we have our text changing to cattywampus. It's truncated. That's not really an issue right now, and it changed the color to red. Awesome, just like that, you have written your first bit of Swift code. Very exciting. And I know it may seem trivial, but this is really the foundation for almost everything you'll be doing as an iOS developer, making a user interface and then responding to the user's input with code. Okay, so this is cool and all, but not exactly what we want to do with our app, right? We want to change the text label and background color when we click on our button based on whether we want it to be lights on or lights off. So let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this code, and we are starting in the state of our lights being off, right? That's what we have here in our storyboard. We start out, it's black, and the lights say, oh, the lights say lights on right now. Let's go ahead and change that to lights off. There we go. Let's go ahead and turn the lights on, as it were. So to do that, we're going to change the text of the label to say lights on. We're going to change the text color to black so that it shows up on our background, which we are going to change to white. Okay, so let's write those 3 lines of code here. So I'm going to say light switch label dot text is equal to lights on. We're going to say light switch label dot text color is equal to UI color dot black. And then we're going to change the background color of the view, okay? And we access the view just by saying view, okay? And so this is the view that the controller manages, okay? And this is important right here. Just a quick side tip. When you start writing out and you get your autocomplete, pay attention to what is written right down here. This will give you hints and ideas of what this class or function is doing, okay? So I'm going to say view dot background color is equal to UI color, and we're going to change it to white. Awesome, let's test that out. All right, here we go, moment of truth. I click and ooh, there we go. We are now lights on. All right, so now let's turn them off. I'm clicking, but it's not doing anything. And that is because we haven't written the code for turning the lights off. So let's do that. If you think about a light switch, it is either on or off. That's it. This can be represented in code as something called a Boolean. And this is a type that can be true or false, just like a light switch. Now the button itself only lets us know that the user has clicked it. It doesn't know if it should change the background color to black or white. It's not keeping track of that. We need to keep track of the state of the light switch. And we're going to do that with our very first variable. We'll talk in depth about variables in a few lessons, but basically it is a container for a value, and that value can change. And you can make a variable just like this. So we declare a variable by saying var. Okay, so this creates a variable that can be changed. And if you do the autocomplete, you'll see that we need to provide a name and a value, okay? I don't typically use the autocomplete, so I'm just gonna say var lights are on. Okay, so that's the name of our variable, and we supply a value. And remember that we are starting with the lights off, so I'm gonna say lights are on is equal to false, okay? So this is our starting state. The lights are off. So lights are on is equal to false. I know that's a little bit tricky. And when we click on the button, we are going to change the value of this variable from false to true, and then true to false, just like a light switch. On, off, on, off. So our code needs to make a decision based on the value of this Boolean. And you can think through the logic, and you may say something like this. If lights are on is true, then when we click the button, we're going to turn the lights off. If lights are on is false, then when we click the button, we're going to turn them on. So what we just did here was basically writing some pseudocode. Pseudocode is English language, or whatever your native language is, describing what we want the code to do. And this can be very helpful when you are trying to figure out how to implement something. So let's translate that pseudocode into Swift code, okay? So we're going to say, if lights are on, so if they're on, then we're going to turn them off, okay? So if lights are on is equal to true, turn them off. Turn them off. And just real quick, this double backslash makes this a comment, okay? Comments are not compiled into your code, okay? It's a good way to make notes for yourself and describe what code does and stuff, okay? So here we turn them off. If lights are on is equal to false, or they are off, then we are going to turn them on. And we already wrote the code to turn on the lights, which is right here. So I'm just going to cut this and paste it here. Okay, and if it gets badly formatted, you can reformat by holding Control and I. There we go. All right, so now let's write the code for turning the lights off, okay? So for that we say light switch label dot text is equal to lights off. Then we're going to say light switch label dot text color is equal to UI color dot white. And then we're going to change the view dot background color equal to UI color dot black. Very good. Now the final thing that we need to do is, like I said, we need to keep track of the state of our variable lights are on, okay? So when we click on the button and it's currently true, we need to then set it to false. So we're gonna say lights are on is equal to false. And then likewise right here, when it's false, after we click it, we're going to change it to true. So I'm gonna say lights are on is equal to true. Now, before we run this, since Booleans only have two values, true and false, we don't really need to have two separate checks. What we can do is we can combine this like this. So delete that and instead have an else statement. So what we've done here is combine this into an if-else block. So what we're doing is we're saying if the lights are on, then do this, otherwise do this, turn them on. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that and click, and the lights turn on, then the lights turn off. Haha, very cool. All right, so that is working great. We can do one more thing to make this a little bit nicer. Instead of manually setting the lights are on variable here, we can simply say dot toggle, and this toggles the Boolean variable's value. And then here we can say dot toggle as well. And then I'm just going to do a little bit more clean up right here, make that look nicer. Very good. Let's run that one more time and then we will finish up. All right, testing it again. Beautiful. So there you have it, your very first iOS app. I hope you had a lot of fun making it. If anything is still fuzzy or confusing, feel free to rewatch the lesson or ask a question in the Q&A section. All right, I will see you in the next one.